Zamada was just an ordinary office worker going to work in the morning and coming home to dive straight into gaming at night. Until today, he'd grown utterly fed up with the game he was playing. Even though he'd beaten it after 3 years, he still wasn't satisfied. Zamada wanted to find a game so difficult it would take a full 15 years to complete. Right then, a notification popped up on his screen about another game one, with no ending whatsoever. Immediately intrigued, the protagonist started playing right away. He also chose the highest difficulty setting for his starting character. His main class was Summoner, ranked even higher than Demon Lord. The initial setup placed him in an underdeveloped surf village. Still, Zamada didn't hesitate and jumped right in. Right after that, the male lead was reincarnated into another world. His parents were overjoyed to hear their newborn crying loudly. It was their first child, so everyone was extremely anxious. His father named the boy Arling. Just as the game settings dictated, Alain's family and neighbors were all very friendly. His mother took great care of him, and this warm feeling made him very happy. He tried to enjoy every moment. After all, things would eventually work out as long as he kept trying. He was already 1 year old but still couldn't speak. However, since his mind was that of an adult, he easily understood what his parents said. Because residents had to pay land tax to farm here, the village still didn't have an official name. His father, Rodin, was a brave young man just over 20 years old. His mother, Teresia, was incredibly beautiful and gentle. Since both parents were still very young, Arling guessed he'd soon have a younger sibling. He carefully concealed his special abilities. Later, Arling checked his status screen and saw disastrous stats. Everything was at the lowest possible level, with his class listed as Summoner. His main skills were summoning and creation. The more he used them, the more they leveled up. His current level cap was 1, so he could only summon insects and low-tier beasts. Just then, a letter arrived from the City of Creation. Due to a game installation bug, this magic tome had been custom-made by the player. Setting that aside, Arling tried using his summoning skill, but it failed. He didn't know the proper incantation yet. He figured he'd have to figure it out himself, so he started by using his creation skill. Immediately, an insect-like entity formed. Just as he was about to summon a grasshopper, his mother walked in. Seeing this, he pretended to be asleep to reassure her. Arling decided to rest and conserve energy. His child's body was still quite weak. The next morning, his father woke early to go to work, while his mother handled housework and childcare. Once Teresia left for chores, he dared to open his grimoire and experiment. A low-tier insect was successfully summoned. Light filled the room before a grasshopper materialized. Arling worried it might not obey him. As expected, being the lowest tier, the grasshopper resisted his commands. He had to name it Den-Ka. Summoned creatures boosted his own stats, which was pretty great. He was thrilled until his mother walked in. Right then, the grasshopper crawled out and startled her, making Teresia scream in terror. Outside, Rodin and the other men were out hunting to support their families. Inside, Arling kept experimenting and created a mouse. Koro was just as dumb as Den-Ka. Its only skill was running fast, nothing else at all. At least it obeyed him, making it slightly smarter than that useless grasshopper. This world was full of powerful magical beasts. With just these 2 creatures, he wouldn't stand a chance against them. Currently limited by his level, he could summon a maximum of 10 creatures. The most important factor was stat synergy. The bonus stats from his 2 summons already made him far stronger than an average child, but his downside was leveling up 100 times harder than others. Just then, his father returned home covered in blood. Fortunately, it was just beast blood from his usual hunts. Rodin had taken down a large predator and proudly showed it off to his wife and son. It was hunting season, time to stockpile food for winter. Arling eagerly climbed onto his father's shoulder to see the beast. It was his first time seeing the outside world, and he was thrilled. His father pointed out a creature called Anbolharin. They were migrating north, signaling the start of beast season. His name, Arling, was inspired by Ambolharam because that creature knew no limits. It could fly anywhere it desired. His parents hoped that when he grew up, he too would gain the freedom to do whatever he wished. Soon, they arrived at the hunting site. Arling gaped in awe at the enormous predator. He told himself he could never defeat something like that. Just then, his father's friend came over to greet them. The man announced the protagonist's arrival. Everyone praised Rodden, but he humbly claimed it was just luck. Arling was introduced to their kind neighbor. He politely waved, surprising the blonde-haired man. His son Quian was the same age, but nowhere near as mature. Arling asked how strong the beast was and learned it took two grown men to handle it. It was classified as an S-rank monster, no joke. The scene shifts 10 months later. Arling had now reached level 2 and was ecstatic. He could now create a rank monsters and had unlocked the fusion skill. His summon limit had increased, meaning his stats would double. That night, he ate heavily to boost his mana. Using fusion required significant mana reserves. The next morning, he tried again but failed. He couldn't even summon a rank beast yet. Arling collapsed, cursing himself for choosing hell difficulty. More time passed. By now, he could summon 2 additional creatures. He fused Ponta and Mobasuk to create a new being. He named it Sheppy. This bird was smarter than the others. Its skill was voice mimicry. Arling immediately thought of using it to deceive enemies. Zan's skill was taunt, while the mole's was digging. Together, they could set up numerous pit traps. To become a great summoner, he needed to fully understand each creature's stats. He'd soon have to study other skill mechanics too. It was overwhelming. His current level still didn't allow him to fight natural magical beasts. Just then, his neighbor girl came to challenge him to swordplay as she did every day. Krana spent all day and night practicing sword fighting. Though stronger than him, her pink hair radiated sheer power. No matter how seriously he fought, he never won. She clearly had a natural talent for swords. Of course, his wooden sword broke again. Later that afternoon, Krana told him his mother was pregnant with a second child. So Arling tried helping his mother with household chores to ease her burden. That evening, he asked his father if he could pick fruit for his mother. Teresa's belly was already very large. His parents were delighted he was such a thoughtful child. But his mother refused, saying kids shouldn't work yet. Just play for now, you'll have plenty of time to work when you're older. Born into serfdom, farming was simply inevitable. If he were a father, he wouldn't want his son working hard so young either. Teresa asked why he'd been throwing stones at trees lately. He explained there were many magical beasts in the forest. If any ever appeared, he'd use stones to trap them and protect his mother and sibling. In truth, he was testing whether he could learn new skills this way. His mother noticed how close he'd become with Krana. They looked forward to the upcoming assessment, a ritual at age 5 to identify talent. If lucky, Arling might escape serfdom. Hearing this, he grew excited. Winter arrived quickly. Arling was now strong enough to maintain a summoned creature for an entire day. His daily sparring with Krana continued as always. His sword got broken. Just then, his mother walked out and the grasshopper latched onto her. Terrified, Teresa went into premature labor. Krana rushed home to fetch her mother. Arling frantically boiled hot water. They didn't know what else to do. The next morning, Krana's family arrived to help. The men were sent outside to pray. Everyone was awakened at dawn by a newborn's cry. Elaine's younger sibling was a boy. His father named him Matt. Arling asked if the name was related to magical beasts. Teresa just laughed happily. Arling wondered he'd been reincarnated. Good news. He felt no sadness leaving his past life behind. There'd been nothing worth holding onto there anyway. Now, things were different. He had a small family and a little brother. He didn't know what lay ahead, But Oling knew he had to free his family from serfdom. The scene shifts to Elaine's 5th birthday. His father took him to the assessment all children had to attend. Regardless of being serfs or outsiders, everyone had the right to be tested. If he showed talent, he could surely escape serfdom. However, there were many competitors. Every family here had lots of kids, making it highly competitive. Among them, Krana was the strongest candidate. Since she was his age, she came along too. It was their first time visiting the freeman's village. They were amazed. Krana wore a nice dress, hoping to earn the title of swordsman so she could join the knights and protect her mother someday. The assessment took place at the church. Many talented children had registered and awaited testing. Everyone wore fine clothes except Oling, who looked disheveled. His black eyes and hair were rare in this world, drawing attention. A church official stepped out and announced, "If the divine has granted you opportunity, heroes may rise even from among serfs." For example, Saints' classes came from commoners, and Sword Saint Devout was once a serf too. Oling already knew this. Great heroes often emerged from the lowest classes. Thus, everyone would be assessed equally, regardless of status. Inside the church, they saw statues of legendary heroes. Among them was Elmi the Divine, being and also the system administrator. The assessment began with the village chief's eldest son. All talents and traits would be recorded. The boy looked nervous, hesitating to touch the orb. His father kept encouraging him. When his status appeared, it revealed talent in commerce. His father burst into joyful tears. Having any talent was enough. The type didn't matter. Oling naturally opened his grimoire. He realized no one else could see it but him. Some kids with no talent cried in disappointment. Those with combat potential, however, would surely have better lives. This continued until only Krana and Oling remained. She rushed in. The orb glowed brightly. Her stats stunned everyone. They called it a miracle. She possessed Sword Saint talent. This would shock the entire nation. Her father and she were overjoyed beyond words. Oling wasn't surprised. Krana was incredibly strong. He stepped forward for his turn. The orb shone even brighter than during Krana's test, but the result was confusing. The priest declared he had no talent at all. Father and son were devastated. But Oling noticed his summoner class was misspelled on the screen. That must be why they deemed him talentless. His mother and little brother waited at home. His lack of talent saddened his father deeply. But Rodden comforted him. "You're our son, that's all that matters." Living with his family wasn't bad at all. Oling felt happy and content. That night, he lay awake. All his stats were E-ranked. Leveling up would be extremely hard. He was the only one on Hell mode. That's why all his stats were E, unlike other players whose stats scaled with level. Most people would have given up, but Oling had played countless games and accepted the challenge. He reminded himself, games are only fun when they're this hard. True glory comes from conquering the highest difficulty. The next day, Oling sensed something odd about his father. The whole family visited Krana's house to celebrate. The pink-haired girl was thrilled. Sword Saint was even greater than swordsman. With such a powerful figure born in their village, Krana's family received better treatment, even a gesture from the village chief. Rodden, though fond of drinking, seemed irritated. Oling guessed he was jealous of Krana's Sword Saint title. The two men glared at each other, then offered drinks only to start arguing. Earlier, Rodden had threatened to cut ties with his best friend. Their wives were shocked, but Rodden had his reasons. Krana would surely rise in status and lift her whole family with her. They'd likely become nobles, so serfdom wouldn't matter anymore. Gita snapped back. "That's got nothing to do with us." The argument escalated. Oling tried getting Krana to intervene, but their wives stepped in first. As soon as the wives spoke, both men fell silent. Aling asked if his dad and uncle always argued. Yes, they used to fight constantly before having families. Only after having kids did they calm down. The four adults had grown up together in the same village, and eventually married each other. Their village was founded just last year. They'd agreed to settle here together. They were so close that the two men built identical houses. Hearing this, Rodden and Gita resumed arguing over who contributed more to building the houses. It had been ages since they last drank together. They reminisced about old times. Days later, Gita received news that the Night Order would visit Qian, much to his surprise. Both fathers brought their children. Rumors of the Sword Saint had spread everywhere. Other talented kids arrived, too, mocking Oling as a failure with all his stats and serf status. Krana defended him, insisting Oling was very strong. The royal knights arrived, everyone bowed in fear and respect. After discussions, the village chief called out Gita and his daughter. Krana was ecstatic to see real swords. Oling feared she'd leave the village and felt sad. Gita objected to his 5-year-old daughter dueling knights with real blades. The knights wanted to verify if she truly was a genuine sword saint. The captain ordered his vice-captain, Lebron, to test her. He warned, violating assessment protocol meant death. They had the right to confirm her talent through combat. Gita begged for mercy. She was only 5. The knights threatened to execute the whole family if they refused. Innocent Krana didn't care borrowing a small sword. She eagerly accepted the challenge. On the arena, Krana introduced herself as a knight issuing a duel. Lebron accepted. She attacked aggressively as she always did with Oling. Her swordsmanship had improved through relentless daily practice. But Lebron's larger physique gave him an edge. Quickly, Krana was kicked hard into a wall. Her father seethed with rage. He wanted to fight them himself. Oling and Rodden were restrained to prevent interference. Then, Krana rose, awakening her sword saint bloodline. The pressure made Lebron break into cold sweat. She launched a furious assault, giving him no chance to counter and even shattered his sword. The captain immediately halted the match. Lebron collapsed on the spot. The villagers cheered. Krana had defeated the vice-captain. This proved she was a true sword saint. Gita was relieved his daughter was unharmed. The captain, who'd earlier threatened execution, now thanked them for raising a sword saint and apologized for his stubbornness. Next, they discussed her future. He invited Gita to accompany him for reassurance. They were invited into the village chief's home. Gita still felt guilty for putting his daughter in danger. Oling eyed some delicious fruits. He wanted to take some home for his mom and brother. The captain introduced himself as Zenith, sent by the Lord to verify the sword saint. The village would now be renamed after Krana by the Lord's decree, which the chief immediately obeyed. He explained, 3 years ago, a supposed sword saint was born to a viscount's family. That person served the royal family but failed to meet expectations. Retesting revealed they were just an ordinary swordsman. Since then, they'd grown cautious about exaggerated claims. Zenov apologized again for testing Krana so harshly. Her family would raise her until age 12, then she'd attend a prestigious academy. Eventually, she'd serve the royal court. Another boy asked if all knights had to attend the academy. Zenov confirmed they did. While they talked, Oling secretly pocketed 2 ripe fruits. Zenov promised to send teachers to the village. Studying hard could earn them admission to the academy. Krana invited Oling to join training, but that same boy mocked him again. Zenov then noticed Elaine's rare black hair and eyes. Learning he was Rodden's son, he recalled. Rodden was hailed as a hero for hunting giant boars. Zenov stood and thanked him. He loved the boar meat from this village. Rodden's bravery in facing danger earned high regard. Time passed. One day, Arling leveled up and was overjoyed. Checking his status, he'd gained the reinforced skill. Now rank monsters. As before, he'd need to fuse to creatures to create a new one. He hoped to summon a second-generation creature. If he could summon a dragon at this stage, he'd be unstoppable. His summon limit had also increased to 30. It had taken 2 years to level up. Grinding was tough, so this victory felt sweet. That evening, the family gathered by the fire. His mother was pregnant again. Another sibling was on the way. Arling took on more chores to ease her burden. Matt asked if he'd get a brother. His dad said it could be a sister. Since Teresa's belly felt light, she guessed it was a girl. If so, she wanted to name the baby herself. When asked if she'd chosen Nama, Arling absent-mindedly ordered his book. A message from Elmi appeared and he read it aloud without thinking. His parents gasped. Elmi was the divine's name. No one would dare name a child after a god. Teresa felt her son had been acting strangely lately and asked if he was okay. Arling pretended nothing was wrong and asked about his father's healing wound. Raden said it healed because he'd overcome a divine trial. He explained that sometimes special moments occurred when fatigue vanished and wounds closed instantly. Arling realized this was how leveling up manifested in this world. His father gained experience through daily boar hunts. Though he couldn't see stats, Arling guessed his father was very strong. His summoning skill was now level 3, but his base level remained 1. He couldn't gain EXP without defeating magical beasts, so he asked his father to join the hunt. Raden refused. It was too dangerous. Many had died. It wasn't a joke. Later, after his brother slept, Arling checked his messages. The system bug had been fixed. They'd also sent a message to the Pope to inform everyone about the protagonist. His E-ranked stats were due to Hell mode. Normally, his stats would look like this. Roughly equal to Krana's Sword Saint potential. His efforts were paying off. He just had to keep going. Arling quickly moved to reinforce his summons. The Grasshopper's core stats increased after evolution. When summon, didn't see a glowed. Its size didn't change, but it felt much tougher. This proved summoners weren't just about summoning monsters. Just then, Teresa walked in and saw the grasshopper. As usual, she swatted it into oblivion. The next morning, Raden left to hunt and stockpile for winter. Arling pondered reinforcement further. With enough mana, he could reinforce all stored summons at once. The next morning, after laundry, he tried creating a new summon. He tested various combinations but nothing new appeared. Finally, combining a bug and a bird produced a plant? Arling was baffled. Summoners could summon plants, but its stats were high, and it boosted his mana regeneration. With this support, his leveling time would decrease by several years. Then summon like this. It resembled an apple but could move. Arling named it Apple. It was intelligent and showed him its special skill. Activating Aruma made Apple burrow underground and sprout a sapling. Surprisingly, it released a pleasant aroma that lifted his mood. Just then, his mother and brother arrived. Arling ordered Apple to return to storage but it disobeyed. The tree remained visible. Luckily, they loved its fragrant scent. Later, Krana resumed training him, or rather, beating him up. Lately, the pink-haired girl had grown much stronger, but she felt she'd improved too. Her status confirmed her swordsmanship had reached level 3, expanding her storage also slightly boosted her endurance and attack. He wasn't sure if his own growth came from Aruma. Earlier, he'd summoned Fido, an attack-type dog. He wanted to test Fido's abilities but didn't dare use it on Krana. Before sunset, Arling practiced stone throwing to build endurance. Last time, he'd thrown 20,000 times yet didn't level up. He also repaired household items and watched his brother. The next morning, he he decided to stop stone throwing and focus elsewhere. A rumor had now grown into a full shrub. Though slightly obstructive, it reduced his mana recovery time from 6 hours to 5. That gave him an extra hour for research. That evening, Rodden hadn't returned, worrying the family. Then, Uncle Gida's voice called out. Many villagers carried Rodden home in terrible condition. Inside, mother and son were frantic. Rodden had been gored by a boar's tusk. Luckily, Gida saved him with Mueller flower, a highly valuable herb. After Krana's duel, the knights had apologized and given them gold. Gida used that money to buy the herb. Others blamed the commoners, demanding Gida protect everyone. Matt woke up to the commotion and panicked. The other hunters were sent home for the night. Arling asked his uncle what happened with the commoners. Earlier, the village chief had called Rodden and Gida for a meeting. He wanted commoners to join boar hunts. Boar meat was extremely valuable. Most went to the lord. The rest belonged to hunters. Normally, they traded meat for salt or other goods. The problem: hunting was deadly. Several died each year. But without it, families starved. So they risked their lives to survive. The commoners insisted on joining because they'd heard a hero existed among the serf, hunters. Elaine's father. The captain himself had praised Rodden as a fearless boar hunter. Thanks to that praise, everyone believed Rodden was truly powerful. They assumed hunting with him meant safety, so the chief ordered commoners to join. Initially, Rodden and Gida hated the idea. Letting amateurs join was dangerous. But it was the chief's order, so they complied. The newcomers didn't focus, they lounged around while hunters trained. Probably ashamed to be taught by serfs. Predictably, disaster struck during the hunt. The veterans gave them the easiest task, drawing the boar's attention. But they froze, ruining the plan. They forgot the strategy and endangered themselves. Rodden stepped in to save them and took a fatal blow. Fortunately, they killed the boar. Gida would deliver the meat tomorrow. For now, mother and son stayed to nurse Rodden through the crisis. Arling realized how useless he'd been, unable to help. By morning, Rodden had improved. Waking up, his first question was about the hunt. He knew without meat, his family would starve. Seeing his family, Arling resolved to try harder. He shouldn't obsess over power. Life had deeper meaning. These people didn't think they were in a game. For them, this was reality. And reality was brutally harsh for serfs. With another child coming, his father had to work even harder. Others brought meat to share. Fellow hunters vowed to support the family through winter. Arling urged his father to rest. "I'll protect our family," he declared, astonishing everyone with his maturity. He carried water from a distant well, 2 full buckets on his shoulders, amazing the adults. It was time to stop acting like a child. Luckily, Quian had taken over his usual chores. So no one questioned his sudden strength. Family came first. He allocated all stat points to physical strength, ignoring mana. This would let him handle more physically demanding tasks. After fetching water, he told his mother he'd harvest potatoes. Gida assured her it was fine. Harvesting required strength to pull up whole tubers. Arling yanked them out with one hand, stunning his uncle. Kids these days are unreal. "I inherited it from Dad," Arling joked, then cleared the whole field. Half the harvest went to the Lord. Truly a harsh life. Just then, the village chief visited to apologize, but Teresia wasn't pleased. The blonde boy bowed deeply, apologizing for Rodden's injury. Arling was furious, but since his father forgave them, he let it go. Rodden reminded them to be careful if they ever hunted. Neighbors also came to check on Rodden, urging caution on future hunts. The next day, Oling braided copper wire to trap birds for his father's recovery. He flattened an area and summoned snails. Soon, a simple trap was ready. Since the snail's skill was taunt, he hoped to catch something. The trap looked foolish, but catching 50 decent birds would be worth it. He waited, but nothing came. Just as he considered changing plans, a bird swooped down. From afar, it seemed small, but up close, it was as huge as an elephant. It instantly destroyed his snail army. Facing such a monster, Oling considered retreating. His stats were enough to reinforce all summons for escape, but he stayed determined to protect his family. First, he threw a stone at the bird's head, then struck with his wooden sword. With a real sword, the outcome might have differed. But his wooden blade was useless. He summoned his trap again to upgrade it. His summons were quickly annihilated. Oling suffered heavy injuries, bewildered by the bird's strength. A summoner's weakness was losing summons. His stats plummeted, leaving him vulnerable. He tried to flee, but the monster knocked him down. The bird soon relentlessly attacked with its beak. Oling below kept dodging while thinking of a way to escape this situation. He suddenly summoned 2 worms capable of draining energy from enemies. Thanks to this, Amber weakened significantly. The bird's stats gradually decreased, making the protagonist sigh in relief. Amber tried, shaking off the 2 worms to continue fighting. But at that moment, Oling summoned another group of beasts to attack. He leaped up and delivered a finishing blow straight to the monster's head. His ultimate move was just a wooden sword, but with that force, Amber had to die. The magic book appeared, notifying Oling that he defeated the monster, making him very happy. He also received 100 experience points. He announced he'd bring Amber corpse home, astonishing his whole family. When his mother asked what happened, Oling explained. He claimed he saw this monster dive from the sky, so he caught it. This wasn't exactly a lie, since the bird truly had swooped down to the ground. His father also asked about the wound on his face. Rodden feared his son might be injured elsewhere, but Oling assured him it was nothing. His uncle expressed astonishment at this trophy. Most impressive was that Oling defeated it using only stone throwing and a wooden sword. Moreover, he noticed tooth marks as if bitten. When asked if he'd bitten the bird, Oling finally said he couldn't remember. Right on his forehead. Gita then requested they butcher the monster to help Rodden, since his friend was still in pain. Oling noticed a bump on his uncle's head and immediately guessed father and son had been sparring. It turned out Quion had accidentally hit his dad. Thus, uncle and nephew skinned the bird to extract meat. The creature weighed about 60 kilograms, but after removing all feathers and organs, only about 20 kilograms of edible meat remained. Its wings were also valuable and could be sold or traded. Additionally, they'd have to pay 60% of the sale proceeds as tax to the village chief. Hearing this, the protagonist was shocked. His mother thought this was practically robbery. Gita explained, low-tier monsters like A-rank wild rabbits wouldn't require tax. But since Amber was an S-rank monster, they had no choice. His uncle then extracted the magic stone from inside the bird. They'd have to submit this to the village chief too. But without proper tools, they'd have to wait until butchering. His uncle planned to negotiate with the chief to lower the percentage. They'd face danger yet lost 60% of their earnings, which wasn't fair at all. Immediately, the nephew devised a plan and whispered it to his uncle. They'd act together. Later, they brought the bird to the village chief to report. The old man was delighted to see such rare goods. Uncle Gita proposed submitting all feathers, but keeping all the meat for themselves. Initially, the chief refused and demanded meat too. He claimed the lord had ordered increased meat submissions. Hearing this, Uncle Gita continued negotiating by offering the magic stone. Thus began their scripted performance. They reminded him how someone's decision had severely injured Rodden, forcing young Oling to hunt in his father's place. It was extremely dangerous. After all, Oling immediately acted exhausted and clutched his stomach from hunger. Together, uncle and nephew put the chief in a difficult position. If he took too much, the boy wouldn't hunt again. So the elders agreed, making uncle and nephew overjoyed. Arling happily thanked them, promising to hunt more and supply the chief with feathers and magic stones. This soft approach was precisely what he aimed for. Better to concede a little now than suffer greater losses later. His uncle added more persuasive words until the chief finally agreed. The next day, the protagonist returned to the same spot to trap more amber herons. First, he let his snails use Tauntaun successfully lured down 2 birds. This time, experienced, he immediately recalled his beast to avoid stat reduction. Next, he sent his worm swarm to drain energy from both monsters. Then Arling threw stones at their heads while summoning his hunting dogs to bite. Startled, the birds were pulled down easily, allowing him to deliver finishing blows. Catching 2 at once meant they'd have plenty to eat today. After getting used to using summoned beasts in combat, everything became easier. Arling gained 200 experience points and successfully leveled up. All his stats increased significantly. Additionally, both his physical strength and mana fully recovered. The protagonist was thrilled leveling up once had doubled his strength. Since he could no longer hide his power, Arling decided to tell his parents a bit about his abilities. Rodden still couldn't go hunting yet. Yet his son brought home 2 amber herons today. His father was shocked. Tomorrow morning, after playing with Krana, their family wouldn't worry about food shortages this winter. He planned to trade some meat for other goods. While debating with his strong opponent, he kept asking for opinions. In the end, his friend gave him a bump on the head. That evening, he sat down to tell his parents about himself. Pretending to just wake up, he claimed that at age 1, he'd received a message from God Elmi. By divine decree, I shall grant you wisdom and strength. This meant he'd be healthier and smarter than other children. Elaine's bluff actually fooled his parents. Teresia worried her son would face dangerous trials. His father remained calmer. Today, Rodden noticed his son's facial wound had disappeared, proof he'd overcome a trial. When his mother asked about the earlier assessment results, he revealed he'd received a message from Elmi 2 months ago. His father corrected him to use the Creator God's true name respectfully. Arling explained he actually did have talent, he just hadn't revealed what kind. He wasn't ready to disclose this yet, so he silently apologized to his parents. Teresia then hugged her son, thinking it would have been better if Arling had spoken up sooner. She finally understood why her son always practiced swordsmanship and stone throwing alone. She realized Arling constantly faced dangerous trials. Rodden asked what his son would do next. His mother said he'd continue overcoming trials by hunting magical beasts. Hearing this, his father strongly supported him, saying to speak up if he encountered difficulties. Rodden thought divine information should remain secret, but sharing with Gita was fine since he was such a good friend. Now Rodden could proudly boast about his son, no longer feeling inferior now that Gita had a sword saint daughter. Time had passed. Snow now covered the entire land, making food gathering difficult. But for Arling, it was different. He'd hunted piles of amber herons for storage. Uncle and nephew then sold the meat to exchange for other necessities. This was Elaine's first shopping trip, so Gita tried guiding him. When Arling asked about the difference between commoners and serfs, his uncle explained it was social status. Commoners didn't pay the 60% tax they did, making advancement easier. To become commoners, they'd need to pay the lord about 10 gold coins. Afterward, they'd pay about 3 gold coins annually in taxes. Additionally, the lord would reward them by elevating their social status if they achieved something exceptional. Since his mother was expecting another baby, they needed 50 gold coins to make the whole family commoners. Uncle and nephew then traded some dried meat for salt. The other uncle exchanged for fruits and other items. After that day, Arling could trade independently. He asked prices to understand market opportunities for next time. Seeing delicious-looking fruit, he asked how much it cost to trade. He learned meat was 4 times more valuable than regular fruit. After learning commodity values, he recorded them in his book. He calculated that to earn 50 gold coins for his family, he'd need to hunt 500 amber herons. This would take 5 years, but the protagonist wasn't discouraged. He then went to inquire about recovery potions. His uncle said those were expensive. How could they have any here? There were various wound healing items, with prices varying by effectiveness. He remembered the flower Uncle Gita used to save his father and asked, but they didn't have it. His uncle recounted how he'd previously sold his most precious plant to Gita after the latter saved his life. Crying profusely, he'd even sold it for 2 gold coins, less than its actual value. Fortunately, this uncle was kind-hearted and sold it anyway. Understanding, Aleng offered some dried meat in return. He explained that Uncle Gita had saved his father, and thanks to that flower, his dad survived. So consider this a thank you gift. Outside, he discovered weapons sold for 50 silver coins. Coincidentally, he met 12 peers his age. The annoying kid asked what Aleng was doing there, so he just walked away. Trees got punched by that guy. Aleng was furious and wanted to teach him a lesson. He pointed his sword at the opponent, startling Gita. He challenged the boy to fetch real weapons and duel with their fathers. Hearing this, the kid got angry and complied. The village chief's son was gentler and greeted politely. Their battle began immediately. The opponent was just big-boned but much weaker than the protagonist. Still, he was stronger than average kids. Aleng delivered a finishing blow, making his opponent surrender completely. Now the family had a new member, his little sister. His father's wounds had healed. In the following days, Dorgora came to learn combat from Aleng. Matti was guided by Krana in spear techniques. Seeing this made him very happy. That older guy tried competing but still got suppressed. In the evenings, he played with Milla. His little sister was extremely adorable. Just then, his father and uncle returned home unhappy. The village chief had called them to discuss increasing wild boar meat submissions to the lord from 10 to 15 catties. This meant they'd need to hunt more. Commoners would join too, making his wife extremely worried. Rodden had tried refusing, but the chief's order was absolute. Refusing meant land confiscation and expulsion. Understanding the severity, Aleng reassured everyone. He promised to help since the Creator God had granted him wisdom and strength. At dusk, Aleng and his father visited other hunters to greet them. Rodden apologized for worrying everyone, but assured them he was recovered and would resume hunting. Bringing Aleng along was mentioned, but his father only allowed him to watch from a safe distance. Being able to follow like this made him very happy. He could learn many things. Most importantly, he couldn't let his father or anyone else get injured again. The blonde kid who caused trouble before came to express determination. This time, regardless of circumstances, he'd stay to support. Gita then rallied everyone to return. Thus, Aleng wouldn't leave the village until 5 to 7 years as a serf. Truly a major life advancement. Then he looked toward White Mane Mountain. Every autumn, wild boars descended to forage. More importantly, White Mane was somewhere on that mountain. Later at the assembly point, Rodden instructed everyone to follow training procedures exactly. Aleng and the commoner kid stayed in a safe corner. Gita's team took charge of controlling the lead boar. They held it firmly while Rodden's group attacked from both sides for the kill. This was how serf hunters operated. Seeing this excited Aleng tremendously. The commoners then joined to assist slightly. Essentially, the others did all the work, so the kids just needed to stab a few times to finish. Thus both leveled up and felt newfound strength within. As Aleng thought, since wild boars were S-rank monsters, those two gained substantial experience. For Aleng, just standing idle earned nothing. He needed to deal damage to the boar to gain anything. When returning home to fetch water, Aleng was asked about joining tomorrow's hunt. He declared he'd go every day from now on. He also asked 2 older boys to announce he'd use spears too. They knew this would anger Rodden. One of them couldn't hunt because his wife was pregnant. Being a commoner, Aleng made a request. He led him home to show unbutchered amber herring carcasses. The job was simple: butcher all these. Payment was 2 portions of meat per carcass. The offer was so good the man immediately agreed. This wasn't laziness. Aleng knew he needed to accelerate progress to earn 50 gold coins quickly. Thus the whole family could become commoners and receive more benefits. The next day, hunting resumed. 2 more commoners joined. Aling wondered why the Lord needed so much boar meat. 2 boars charged immediately. Like yesterday, Gida's team performed excellently, blocking the lead boar while new recruits cleaned up for experience. This time, the protagonist dealt some damage and was thrilled to reach level 3. It turned out that while others lured the monster, Aling secretly summoned Denka nearby to deal damage. Within a 50-meter radius, he could summon beasts anywhere. Thus, when the boar crushed Denka, the summoner still counted as participating. This method only cost him a few Denkas. Time passed. 3 months later. Krana and Aling were invited to the village chief's banquet. They received gifts and were overjoyed. This was the reward for delivering 15 predator beasts to the Lord. Now both families gathered to welcome the new year. They also celebrated Tet here. Rodden and Gida should have attended the chief's banquet, but they disliked New Year formalities and stayed home. Both families happily ate and shared good stories. Recently, the old chief thanked hunters for meeting quotas. Elaine's father thought hunting 20 next year wouldn't be too hard. All thanks to Elaine's newcomer support plan. His uncle asked about the fruit behind him. It was bait. Hearing this, both fathers immediately looked earnest. Knowing this, Aling found ways to lure prey. He asked Krana to keep helping Matt with spears since his brother showed great potential. When his father asked about the fruit, he said it was a gift from the chief for his horse. So if Dad wanted to drink, he'd have to defeat him first. His father immediately agreed without much thought. Aling set terms. If he won, he could use spears for boar hunting. Rodden then realized he'd been tricked by his son. They never expected the kid to be this cunning. They'd settle this with arm wrestling. Aling was confident because he'd grown much stronger recently. All his stored entities boosted attack stats. Plus, he was already level 6, extremely confident. For Uncle Gida, it was quite simple. Aling wrestled his arm down, surprising everyone. After resting briefly, it was his father's turn. Rodden's hands were calloused, a testament to relentless effort. Father and son were determined to win. But Rodden was still stronger and immediately pinned Aling down. Keeping his word, Aling handed his father the wine bottle to enjoy. In strength, his uncle was D rank while his father was S rank. His parents thought Aling was sad and encouraged him. They said he wasn't weak, his father was just exceptionally strong. Later, his cheerful uncle challenged others to arm wrestling. In the end, Matty stomped his hand, surprising Aling. Wait, when did Greener get so strong? Days later, his summoning skill reached level 4, and his book upgraded to level 3. Thus he unlocked E-rank monsters and new species. Calculating, additional summons would boost stats enough to defeat his father. He also discovered a new storage type skill. Testing by putting items inside, he found it never filled up. Inserting and retrieving items was incredibly simple. Most puzzling was its unlimited capacity. Carrying items was crucial, yet the system granted this skill. Something significant must happen soon. Seeing her son deep in thought, Teresia asked what was wrong. He pretended nothing was amiss, but was actually worried. Outside, the protagonist began summoning new beasts. Surprisingly, these monsters were stronger, requiring magic stones for summoning. He quietly went inside to retrieve stored money and magic stones. After placing them in storage, his beasts appeared. This time, it was a fairly large melancholy boar. Just as his mother called out, Aling hid it behind his back. Fortunately, she didn't notice, so he enjoyed the joy of having a new beast. Later he went to a quiet area to summon a giant black tiger. Though self-summoned, it still amazed him. Its stats were absolutely wonderful. He named it Tama. Combining it with the melancholy ball produced a sheep. Summoning more required magic stones. Meanwhile, small monsters like horned rabbits no longer appeared around the village. The next day, friends visited his house. He asked Pel Muas about magic stones. This friend knew well and explained. The capital had many magic stones as they were materials for magic tools. D and S rank stones were most commonly used. E rank stones were very cheap and found everywhere. Saying this, he picked one up for Arleng. With villagers' help, the protagonist gathered a bunch of magic stones for summoning new beasts. Total of 5 E rank stones. Just then, a wild boar charged to attack. His first trap had guidance ability. The chamber trap used hypnosis to stop the boar's assault. Another predator charged, but Cabio blocked it. This creature specialized in tanking. When Arling snapped out of it, he realized it was just imagination. In this situation, he'd have to learn combat entirely on his own with no guidance. Each summoned beast had a specific role. Arling summoned all to study, attack, defense, debuff, healing, scouting. He had everything covered. They'd form a powerful team for him. Storage was for keeping magic stones since he couldn't always carry people around. Imagining himself commanding a mighty monster army excited him greatly. The next day, Arling and 2 adults were called by the village chief for important discussions. He announced the Lord would visit soon. Previously, they'd been forced to catch 20 predator beasts as tribute. Now the Lord wanted to personally observe how surf hunters operated. Lord Grader seemed displeased. Rodden was more concerned about why his son was summoned too. The chief explained the Lord needed attendance. This surprised all 3. They'd assumed the position was for the chief's son. The chief said his son wasn't good at such tasks, so he chose Arling instead. He'd learned to host important figures. That's why the old man gave him that special fruit. Rumors of his intelligence had spread widely. Last year, surf hunters' success was maintained thanks to him. Thus the chief believed the protagonist would succeed in this task too. He wasn't interested, but remaining a serf would make leaving the village difficult. Relying solely on boar and amber heron hunting would take 15 more years to earn enough for commoner status. His father said he could refuse if he disliked it. But Arling didn't want to miss any opportunity. If the Lord favored him, he'd receive rewards. Scene shifts to the Lord's reception. As he stepped down, his first impression was those eyes full of charisma. This time, he brought his daughter Cecil. Inside, the Lord thanked the village chief for persistently expanding the town over the years. He also apologized regarding the predator beast meat matter. He admitted the increased requirement seemed rather difficult. But it was the king's decree, leaving him no choice. He was extremely angry because someone had deliberately mentioned predator hunting right after his defeat. That's why this year's quota increased. He didn't actually want to harm them. Now meat dishes were served for everyone. Both the Lord and his daughter praised them highly. When asked what meat this was, Arling stepped forward to introduce. This is amber heron meat, a local specialty. He offered to present some to the Lord. The other dish was made from breast meat and liver with various seasonings. The Lord was immediately pleased, asking if this was the chief's son. I know him, Arling. With black eyes and hair, the knight captain recognized him as Rodden, the boar hunter's son. They exchanged greetings and discussed tomorrow's demonstration of wild boar hunting techniques. The Lord found him remarkably articulate, assuming his father was a knight or something, never expecting a serf. Cecil disliked this immediately. Her father scolded her serfs were still his subjects. Her wounded pride made the purple-haired girl resentful, so she started hating him. Arling hadn't even spoken yet, and was already hated. The captain explained the 20 beast requirement was the king's order. If they fell short, his team would join the hunt. Hearing this, Arling was unhappy. If serfs lost their jobs, everything would collapse. Cecil was excited to see knights work. The Lord said they just needed to teach the hunting method. The rest could be handled by the knight squad. Arling refused, saying there were only 20 beasts, no need to worry. Tomorrow we'll prove we can meet the quota. The protagonist's declaration shocked everyone. The next day, the hunt began. Cecil rode with the steward, extremely excited. Serfs had built a small tower for the Lord to observe from above. Arleng introduced the forest where boar herds frequently appeared. Serf warriors had already assembled. Surprisingly, one group wore armor, astonishing the captain. Arleng explained last year's surplus allowed them to craft full armor sets this year. Those assigned to lure predators began moving. They prioritized speed, so their gear was quite light. Though hundreds of boars were inside, luring one out was extremely laborious. The captain asked about Sword Saint Krana's status. Regarding his friend, he had to say she was as strong as an ox. Next hunting season, she'd enroll in school, so he wanted Arleng to pass along preparation advice. Just then, someone lured a wild boar outside. Unlike previous hunts, this time they were better prepared and thus less dangerous. Rodden and strong men blocked the boar's movement. Large shields made from the boar's sturdy spine bones were extremely durable. Rodden's team then charged with spears. They used longer spears this time for safety. His father still delivered the finishing blow. Witnessing this bloody spectacle, Cecil immediately fainted. The serfs' performance was extremely impressive. Though not formally trained like knights, they performed like professional teams. All deserved the warrior title. Now the Lord believed hunting 20 boars was no longer an issue. Just as he finished speaking, 2 betas returned. Next round had 2 boars, worrying the captain who considered sending troops, but Arleng stopped him. The hunting team already had experience taking down 2 simultaneously. Their traditional method remained highly effective, plus his father and others provided strength. Previous hunting difficulties stemmed from everyone's weak income. Each boar hunt required paying 60% tax. The remainder could only be traded for food or necessities, not generating needed income. Thanks to Elaine's idea, hunting became more efficient. Using tactics compensated for disadvantages, enabling successful dual kills. Result: serfs hunted 3 boars in one session. The captain said only 17 more were needed. But Arleng corrected only 10 more since they'd already hunted 7. The monthly target of 20 would definitely be met. Hearing this, the captain knew his knights wouldn't get to demonstrate. Seizing the Lord's good mood, Arleng requested permission for hunters to craft 2 additional large shields for next year's hunt. He also wanted serfs granted free trading rights. The confused Lord needed explanation. If they kept supplying abundant predator meat, market prices would decrease. Armor was crucial for maintaining hunter morale. The captain endorsed this request, so it was approved. Due to Elaine's excellent presentation, the Lord immediately accepted both requests. On the way back, that girl mocked him. "Don't think being praised by my father gives you authority over me." Arleng thus disliked this girl, secretly hoping they'd never meet again. Returning home, all 3 were praised by the Lord for their outstanding performance. Naturally, there'd be rewards for this contribution. Hearing this, he hoped his whole family would become commoners. As expected, both families were promoted. Uncle and father were overjoyed. Arleng was even happier. Saving money meant he could anshin hanto to level up. First goal: conquer Whitemane on the mountain. The Lord also allowed hunters who contributed materials to become commoners. Since they'd meet the king's quota this year, he could return to his domain Ansing. The steward later asked why Rodden hunted boars. Rodden dared not answer, so Uncle Raider explained instead. About 13 years ago, their village had only 100 serfs. Everything was extremely difficult, worsened by boar raids. The boars ate all their stored food supplies. With no way back, Rodden proposed hunting boars for food. Their weapons back then were just sticks and bamboo, nothing like now. But to survive, all men took action. Rodden proposed the hunt, so he felt responsible. That's why his father previously protected commoners to avoid repeating past mistakes. The Lord sympathized. Yet Rodden's decision undoubtedly brought future prosperity to the village. Thus he wanted to reward this hero with something special. His son was thrilled. Until Rodden requested to work at the Lord's manor, then he wasn't happy anymore. Aling was deemed intelligent and sensible. Whatever task given, he'd surely fulfill it. The Lord quite approved of this kid. The steward agreed too, so Aling was permitted to serve at the manor. Elaine's dream of hunting Whitemane vanished like smoke. Serving nobility left no time for leveling hunts. Cecil disliked this, but couldn't stop her father's decision. Besides, Elaine's family had already been promoted to commoners. The protagonist sought reasons to refuse, but seeing his father cry tears of joy, he knew he couldn't anymore. Hearing this news, the whole family was overjoyed. Teresia was moved about leaving everyone behind. Neighbors came to congratulate them. This was everyone's dream. Cranna had to say goodbye to her childhood friend. To cheer her up, he challenged her to one last match. Both fathers were delighted seeing this. As usual, the protagonist got thoroughly beaten. But somehow today he overwhelmed even the Sword Saint. Apparently, he'd prepared many entities to boost stats, increasing his speed significantly. At age 12, Cranna would enroll and later serve the royal court. They might never meet again, so Aling wanted to make an impression. He won but claimed it was a draw. He wanted to settle the score at their next meeting. Mother and brother cried about parting with him. Matt was encouraged to be strong and protect his mother and sister. Miller was slightly older but didn't understand. Aling also thanked the midwife who delivered both siblings. His two close friends came to say goodbye. One gave Aling a knife as a parting gift. Though they argued, they were still very close friends. Thus parents escorted their son, giving endless advice to help him avoid mistakes. His mother added that if things got too hard, he could always return home no problem at all. Thus the noble entered the manor with the lord and steward as permanent guests. Aling watched his parents' figures, not knowing when he'd see them again. Soon, the protagonist arrived at the lord's residence. It was an extremely magnificent place, deeply moving him. As soon as he started working, Aling was tormented by Cecil since he was her attendant. Both struggled reaching fruit in the garden. Their arms were too short. He suggested the steward stand on his shoulders to reach higher. Secretly, he hoped the girl would fall and let out a sweet yelp. The purple-haired girl tasted the apple but found its flavor unsatisfactory. He'd anticipated this but didn't bother warning her, let her experience it herself. His friend ordered him to buy popo fruit at the market. During the errand, Aling obeyed. Just then, a giant magic nest flew overhead. This was his first sighting. He was fascinated. The manor also had devices powered by magic stones. But that flying apple was particularly unusual. Seeing his interest, Cecil allowed him to watch before leaving. The next day, he woke up in his old room. He quickly planted several plant types for relaxation. Exposure to their fragrance would restore mana in about 5 hours. While working, Aling also ate with the other servants. Recon was the head attendant here. When asked about being bullied, Aling didn't even feel like talking about it. He asked his senior what the difference was between an attendant and a servant. Recon explained, stewards, guards, and head chefs held higher ranks. Lower ranks included coachmen, gardeners, and attendants. They were all considered part of the Lord's household. Hearing this, Aling understood why his parents had been so overjoyed. He was now officially considered family to the Lord. Aling then went to serve breakfast to Cecil. Surprisingly, the Lord's family ate very simply, hardly different from the servants. The lady of the house showed interest in Aling and asked how he was adjusting. He politely thanked her, saying it was all thanks to everyone's kindness. Her demeanor made it clear she never would have guessed he came from a serf background. The Lord mentioned that the protagonist had no recognized talent. Hearing this, Cecil proudly boasted that she was a magic scholar. Her older brother, Mihai, was a swordsman. Only the youngest, Thomas, had no talent and felt quite down about it. His father said he'd enroll in the academy, but Thomas wanted to be like his second brother. The father refused the capital's academy, only accepted those with talent. The academy wasn't that bad, anyway. It was where the Lord had first met the children's mother. When Cecil accidentally upset her brother, she immediately glared at Arling. In the afternoon, the protagonist went out to explore since he had the day off. He saw how different the city's development was from the countryside. What he was looking for was the Adventurers Guild. He immediately ran inside to register as an adventurer. Unfortunately, guild rules required applicants to be at least 12 years old. Hearing this, Arling looked for another way to keep hunting monsters. He couldn't just give up on leveling. Fortunately, the Adventurers Guild had plenty of useful information. While reading some commission boards, a man shooed him away, saying this wasn't a place for kids. Arling grew annoyed, saying if they just explained the procedures, he'd leave right away. Monsters appeared everywhere, so the quest board didn't list specific locations. Monsters were valued higher the farther they were from town. Creatures from White Dragon Mountain were considered the most dangerous. Arling pointed to a monster with a 200-coin bounty and asked why no one had taken it. The man was speechless, explaining it was too strong and cunning to fight easily. The bounty for White Dragon was 1,000 gold coins. But no adventurer was strong enough to hunt it. White Dragon Mountain contained abundant precious metals. Several people wanted it, driving the reward higher and higher. This showed Mithril was worth far more than 1,000 gold. Raven's teammates arrived to call him. 2 girls invited him out for drinks after turning in a reward. Arling greeted them, saying he was just learning from a kind senior. He left in a good mood, having gathered some useful information. Time passed to Elaine's monthly day off. Before dawn, he was already outside hunting monsters. As a member of the Lord's household, the guards had to open the gates for him. They told him to hurry back, as he'd been staying out late for too long. First, Arling wanted to start nearby, since monsters grew stronger the farther out you went. Finding a suitable spot, he summoned an eagle to scout the area. Arling trusted this eagle completely. It had the highest intelligence stat among his summons, making it perfect for quickly locating monsters. Arling summoned 5 more eagles to speed things up. Receiving their orders, the flock immediately split up to search. Next came Tama, the saber-toothed tiger, extremely strong, but dumber than the eagles, so it didn't fully understand Elaine's commands. Arling silently thanked Gita for gifting him that practice sword to use as a weapon. Just then, Black located the first target. But because Elaine's orders weren't precise enough, the eagles ended up pointing out a whole group of 7 goblins. The battle erupted immediately. With 10 saber-toothed tigers, Arling easily overwhelmed the goblin pack. They surrounded and attacked from all 4 sides. For safety, Arling also summoned pink aurora moths to put the enemies to sleep. Once the goblins were asleep, finishing them was trivial. After defeating 5 goblins, Arling earned 1,000 experience points. They weren't as strong as boars, but much easier to handle. Most importantly, he collected magic stones for future use. Arling sent Black to search for more goblins within a 3-kilometer radius. Elaine's summoned beasts worked incredibly efficiently. He grinded from early morning until late evening without returning. Today's total haul, 80 goblins, plus 5 E-rank wild rabbits. He earned 16,000 total experience, enough for Arling to successfully level up. Additionally, fighting goblins revealed that his night moth's sleep skill had an 80% success rate. Not a guaranteed 100%. Also, D-rank magic stones couldn't summon E-rank monsters, and vice versa. So Arling needed to hunt various ranks to gather the right stones for summoning. The protagonist then asked the eagle to fly him back to town. Unfortunately, his age meant he still couldn't see in the dark. Time passed a month. Arling went out to buy cloth sandbags for throwing at monsters, since stone throwing was no longer effective. Since his first hunt, he'd gone out for more times. Thanks to Sis, his current level was now 12. Upon returning to the manor, Arling was called in by the head steward. The Lord felt he'd done excellent work over the past 2 months, but they had no idea where he went from dawn until late at night on his days off. To avoid suspicion, Arling honestly confessed he went outside the city to hunt monsters. As Rodden's son, the best boar hunter around, hunting was practically in his blood. Hearing this, the Lord was highly pleased, saying it truly showed he was the serf hero's son. Steward Sebastian assumed Olling was just hunting E-rank rabbits and advised him, don't sell the meat outside. Sell it to the Lord's kitchen instead. Each rabbit would fetch 1 silver coin. Olling was thrilled. He usually just discarded the meat anyway. On the weekend, he went back to the forest to hunt. Today's quota, defeat 100 goblins, plus a few rabbits for food. Black flew back, squawking loudly. He clearly wanted to report something, so Olling ran over to check. Arriving, Olling discovered Raven's adventurer party was in danger. A goblin pack was attacking them. Olling threw a rock at one's head. However, it didn't deal enough damage to kill it in one hit. Realizing the situation was critical, Olling ordered his summoned beasts to help take down the goblins. He couldn't reveal his summons in front of others, so he fought using only his own strength. His current attack power was 300, enough to take down several D-rank monsters. After clearing them, the party reported Raven hadn't passed the divine trial, meaning he couldn't self-heal yet without enough experience to level up. The girl had exhausted her mana and couldn't cast healing spells. Seeing this, Olling stepped in to help. He pulled out life grass, a recently grown plant that, when applied to wounds, brought Raven back from the brink. Ritter and Music were overjoyed, thinking they'd surely die here. Olling also healed his summoned beasts, since he had plenty of life grass left. Raven remembered the kid from the guild. Olling, busy hunting, said his goodbyes. The trio wanted to reward him for saving their lives. He simply asked them to keep his involvement secret. Additionally, he asked them to collect 100 E-rank magic stones. That could be gathered in a week, so Raven agreed. He recalled it took a month for his father to fully heal using the Mueller flower, but with life grass, the process took only a few days. The experience gained from killing goblins differed from solo hunting. More importantly, Black had disobeyed orders to lead his master to save people. It seemed to possess its own intelligence and genuinely worried about the adventurers. Initially, Olling just thought summons were for stat boosts and combat. Who knew Black would prioritize its own emotions over commands? When it looked apologetic, Olling patted its head, saying it was fine. On the contrary, he liked this even more, making the eagle happy. That evening, he was tormented by Cecil again. They secretly knocked over a vase, and she only stopped after mimicking a cat's meow. Time passed. Olling continuously hunted wild rabbits for the Lord's household. Everyone was highly satisfied he truly lived up to being Rodden's son. The captain reported that Krana had also met her quota of 20 giant predator beasts. Thomas looked bored, complaining he couldn't eat predator meat this year like last year. All the hunted meat from the serfs had been sent to the king. The Lord's kind family didn't want to burden the hunters any further. Olling thought it was pathetic the serfs probably ate more predator meat than this noble family. With the new year approaching, the lady decided to cut back on expenses. Thomas unexpectedly asked Olling to hunt a reindeer for the family. Cecil scolded him, saying Olling only took orders from her. The mother advised against it, saying it would put Olling in a difficult spot. Surprisingly, Olling agreed to Thomas's reindeer hunt request, stunning everyone. They knew it was an S-rank magical beast. Just like the boars, this was essentially a new trial. On the weekend, Olling chose a suitable location to hunt the reindeer. Black fortunately spotted one nearby and led the way. Since reindeer were S-rank, goblins were mere prey to them. Olling used his snails to taunt. The reindeer immediately fell for the bait and charged. Using this method, Olling lured the monster into his prepared trap. The creature arrived, ran straight into its doom, and fell into the pit. The hunt was a success. Olling believed that effectively using his summon skills was what made a true summoner. He then used a knife to butcher the beast. Finally, he brought it back to the manor to show the Lord. The sight terrified the household servants. They thought the magical beast could speak, but it was just Olling underneath, dragging it back. The entire lord's family was stunned. This meant a grand New Year's feast could be held. Thomas quickly expressed his gratitude to Arling. Following this, Steward Sebastian was ordered by the Lord to investigate the boy's talent. An 8-year-old hunting an S-rank beast couldn't possibly have no talent at all. That night, thanks to his achievement, Arling was summoned to be recommended as a professional hunter. A hunter's main duties were hunting magical beasts for food, and helping those attacked by beasts. Hunters earned more money. Hearing this, Arling was thrilled he could hunt freely every day. Each hunter's salary doubled to 100 silver coins. He just had to ensure enough magical beasts were supplied for the Lord's table. After that, he could hunt goblins as he pleased. Arling eagerly accepted the new position and asked about hunting tomorrow. But Steward Sebastian said he couldn't hunt daily, he still had to attend to the young lady. Hunting once a week was enough. Basically, business as usual. No wonder the pay went up to 100 silver. Seeing Elaine's disappointed face, Sebastian understood. He said if Arling wasn't satisfied, they'd pretend the offer never existed. Arling still accepted with gratitude, he couldn't ask for too much. Time passed to the new year. Schools were now letting students out to visit their families. Cecil's older brother was no exception. The purple-haired girl told the servants to keep the cake baking a secret for a surprise. Mihai's arrival delighted his sister. She said she was happy but lonely without him around. She clearly said he'd be back in summer, but he hadn't shown up. The boy was 14 this year but looked quite mature. Arling came over to greet and introduce himself. Cecil introduced him as her personal servant and hunter. Mihai was slightly surprised by how skilled the kid was. He assumed Arling was weak, but the protagonist didn't dare claim otherwise. He was glad Mihai's personality was completely different from Cecil's. His sister received a gift bought from the capital, making her overjoyed. The scene made him think of his own family, wondering how his siblings were doing. On the weekend, the protagonist went hunting again. After meeting his daily quota, he returned. The head chef praised the 2 huge magical beasts, saying Mihai would definitely be thrilled to see them. Currently, he was sparring with the knight captain, so Arling rushed over to watch. The boy's swordsmanship talent was extremely high. This was also Elaine's first time seeing the captain use a real sword. After practice, the captain praised the young master for growing much stronger than last year. Cecil later saw Arling had brought back to large monsters and came to look. Knowing he was strong, Mihai requested a spar. The Lord agreed, so the captain lent Mihai a sword. This was a great honor. Holding a mithril weapon thrilled Arling, after sparring with Krana back home. He hadn't dueled anyone else, so this was a great opportunity. His current bonus stats didn't boost speed, as he'd optimized for hunting. Thanks to frequent hunting, his level was now 20. He was confident he wouldn't lose. But he had severely underestimated Mihai's strength. The boy's attack speed and power were incredible. Moreover, he only needed one hand to block Elaine's strikes. The fight worried the lady. The captain encouraged her, saying the young master wouldn't lose. Mihai had completed all his academy training courses over the past year. There was no way he'd lose to someone untrained. Just as predicted, Mihai struck Elaine's weapon away. The sword strike proved the boy's exceptional skill. He'd certainly have a bright future. Mihai's two sisters came to congratulate him. Cecil mocked Arling, annoying him with her arrogance. Mihai's growth came from conquering Dragon's Throat. Real combat against magical beasts gave him vast experience. The pressure was high too, failing meant expulsion. Hearing this, Cecil finally understood why he hadn't returned in summer. Another reason for Mihai's progress was training under the Sword Saint. Hearing this, Arling became highly interested in conquering Dragon's Throat himself. The purple-haired girl asked when Arling would return, learning it wouldn't be until next summer. Taking the opportunity, Arling sealed a deal. They'd duel again when he returned. In exchange, Mihai asked him to take good care of his younger sister. Arling suddenly felt his servant status rising too fast, while all he wanted was to hunt magical beasts. He worried he'd be serving Cecil for life. So he started considering how to resign, gracefully without embarrassing his father. The next day, Mihai returned to the academy city, the same place Krana would eventually go. His sister cried uncontrollably, deeply admiring him. Time passed to April. Another lord arrived as a guest at the manor. He was an extremely unpleasant man. Even after arriving, he complained this was just a worthless countryside. The host lord remained firm but didn't dare challenge him to his face. Arling later brought out fine meat for the guest. The Viscount mocked the host's territory beyond White Dragon Mountain. In rank, a Viscount was higher than a lord, and the two families had held a centuries-old feud. The old man tasted the fine meat and assumed it was predator beast meat. Arling didn't dare say it was just rabbit meat. The lord didn't want to waste predator meat on this clown anyway. This Viscount was the one who brought up predator hunting in front of the king. So Arling had every reason to dislike him. Already annoyed, the old man kept causing trouble. Arling silently cursed, "If your territory is rich, stop bullying the weak." Recon explained to his junior why their territory was poorer than the Viscount's. White Dragon Mountain had mithril deposits on both sides of the border, but currently, the dragon resided more on their side, making mining extremely difficult. Thus, the lord's economy was declining. Fortunately, the dragon loved to sleep. Every 100 years, it returned to the other side to nest. That was their chance to mine, while the other side would grow poorer. The lord asked why the visitor had come. The Viscount explained his youngest daughter had her assessment and showed no talent. It was strange how nobles desired no talent, while two of the Viscount's 3 children actually had gifts. It seemed responsibility would fall heavily on the old man's daughter. Having no talent meant living a carefree life. The lord angrily reminded them of their noble duties. Hearing this, Arling was confused. He always thought having talent was good. Serfs like them prayed for it but never got it. On his next day off, Arling met his adventurer contacts for help. He planned to hunt in a farther location. The reason was simple: no goblins remained around here for him to hunt. They knew he wanted to hunt S-rank beasts here, but seeing his determination, they gave in. First, he prepared proper gear to boost combat power. He needed something that wouldn't restrict movement. The blacksmith offered him heavy armor, but Arling ultimately chose a light cloak. His current stats were fine, so the S-rank magical beast hunt began. Black fortunately spotted prey, a sleeping stone golem. Seizing the opportunity, Arling summoned his saber-toothed tigers to guard. The S-rank monster instantly counterattacked. Fortunately, there were many tigers, and they managed to defeat it. Arling earned 1,500 experience. If he kept hunting this creature, he'd level up quickly. Most importantly, he needed S-rank magic stones to summon new beasts later. The next opponent was a super hard-shelled armor ant. Arling summoned blockers, but the tigers couldn't penetrate its shell. Its armor was genuinely impenetrable. Arling tried using moth-based weapons. He tried finishing it himself. But it felt like stabbing iron. Arling relentlessly stabbed its weak points before the ant could react. He finally defeated it, earning 3,000 experience. However, extracting its magic core was extremely difficult. So, Arling devised a new tactic to defeat it more easily next time. The next day, he requested magic lessons with the Viscount's daughter. The magic teacher also tested his magical aptitude. Arling placed his hand on the orb. It didn't glow, proving he had 0 talent for magic. The protagonist was disappointed, having hoped he could at least cast something. The next evening, while serving breakfast, an alarm bell suddenly rang. Recon rushed in to report that a mud golem was about to attack the town. The night patrol had already confirmed it, so there was no mistake. Captain Zenoff was out hunting and wouldn't return for 2 days. The Lord ordered contact with the Adventurers Guild to handle it, while evacuating civilians to safety. Hearing this, Arling requested to join the defense. Zizila refused, saying that monster wasn't easy to deal with. He was her attendant and shouldn't act without permission. The protagonist apologized, explaining that beyond being an attendant, he was also a hunter. The town was in complete panic. The mud golem was a B-rank monster. None of the local adventurers were strong enough to fight it. Aling had exhausted his mana earlier and was waiting for it to recover. Otherwise, he couldn't do anything. Outside the gates, a family was trapped. The father begged the soldiers to save his wife and child, but no one dared to step out. The giant monster was currently eating a horse. With two people right underneath, Aling had no choice but to draw its attention. He threw a stone into the monster's eye, causing it pain. The soldiers behind thought he was crazy and yelled for him to come back. Aling continued using his throwing skill for ranged attacks. Waiting until the monster was fully drawn in, he announced he'd lure the mud golem toward White Dragon Mountain. Saying it, the boy slipped under its legs and ran in another direction. However, his mana hadn't recovered, so he couldn't summon anything yet. The opponent looked at him mockingly. Aling realized this and grew furious. He insulted the monster's foolish appearance, wondering how his father back home dared to name his son after a mud golem. His mana finally recovered. Aling quickly cleared his hunting deployment cards. Simultaneously, he increased his moth count to 36. This would stack speed and stamina bonuses. Aling continued leading the monster further away. Once out of the town's sight line, he summoned Aurora to cast sleep. However, the mud golem was completely immune to the moth skills. Its resistance was incredibly high, so Aling summoned 3 more moths to try again. This only enraged the mud golem. It swatted all 4 moths away, terrifying Aling. He led it back to White Dragon Mountain, but he still couldn't bisect the damn thing. Using his small size, Aling hid under a tree, then ran elsewhere to rest. The biggest concern was that all his summon skills were useless against the mud golem. He wondered how he could possibly defeat such an enemy. Aling took out his cloak to head back. Unfortunately, the creature had been lying in wait and struck immediately. At that moment, its grinning face became more ferocious and terrifying than ever. 3 days later, Aling finally returned safely but was completely exhausted. He slept for 2 full days before waking up. Cecil was extremely worried. She scolded him harshly for making her panic. The steward, seeing he was fine, asked about the magical beast. Aling explained he'd been chased by the damn thing for 3 straight days, but he finally managed to find his way back to town. The boy later reported to the Lord. He admitted he wasn't old enough to defeat it yet, so running was his only option. The Lord was incredibly proud, while the knights were tasked with protecting the town. Yet during their absence, Aling had single-handedly driven the monster away. His reward for bravery included 10 gold coins from the Lord, plus another 10 from the family he saved. Aling was overjoyed. It was a substantial amount of money. He wanted a mithril weapon and had been grinding for stones. The Lord reminded Aling not to hunt too far from town to avoid danger. The next day, Aling entered the forest with a new sword. It was sharp enough to slice through the armor ant's legs. But it still couldn't pierce its main armor. He had to target the gaps to extract the magic core. By today, Aling had collected enough magic stones to summon new beasts, so he did it immediately. First, he summoned 2 eagles for a few tests. The other was sent to scout a different route. He pulled out fruits and other items to pose questions. The boy put the fruit in a bag and let Black choose. Naturally, with its high intelligence, the bird answered correctly. But what he wanted to know was, if he summoned another eagle, would it share the knowledge? It seemed they had an information-sharing mechanism. The newly summoned eagle could guess correctly right away. However, the eagle already flying overhead didn't know the answer. This meant only newly summoned creatures received shared information. And different species couldn't share information with each other. To summarize, summoned creatures synchronized information, but only among newly called ones. Previously summoned ones on missions elsewhere wouldn't receive it. Moreover, memories and experiences were transferred back upon death. Basically, as long as the summoner lived, all beasts Aling had ever summoned were effectively immortal. Time had passed. Mihai returned home to fulfill his promise of a sword duel with Aling. The purple-haired girl naturally cheered for Aling, though he'd improved greatly. His swordsmanship still couldn't match formal training. In a moment of haste, Oling was disarmed again, just like last time. The captain praised Mihai for his remarkable progress. The protagonist was furious, but could do nothing. He guessed the academy had put students through rigorous trials to make them this strong. Mihai praised Oling for growing stronger. The older brother felt completely at ease leaving Cecil in Elaine's care. After retiring to their rooms, everyone told Mihai about Elaine's encounter with the mud golem. More accurately, how he'd been chased like a dog for 3 days straight. Of course, Mihai couldn't defeat that creature either. It was a B-rank monster requiring multiple high-rank adventurers to tackle. The Lord encouraged his son to keep training. Just then, soldiers reported that White Dragon had begun moving. This was the news the Lord had been waiting for. The dragon was an A-rank monster with a 1,000 gold bounty. According to adventurers, White Dragon was heading toward the neighboring kingdom, right on its 100-year cycle. This meant they could finally begin mining operations. Mihai would help the territory prosper. Xanov was ordered to lead troops to inspect the mines immediately. He said he'd first verify locations under White Dragon's nest, then check the 4 mining zones. Mihai knew they'd face monsters along the way and wanted to join. But the captain stopped him. White Dragon might return. Plus, many equally strong monsters required a full month of investigation. He advised his son to focus on studies first. For Oling, this was crucial information. If the night squad handled it, he'd lose his grinding opportunity, so he needed a plan to not miss it. On the weekend, Oling went far out to test his new summons. All his stats were stable. It had taken him 2 full years to gain 1 level. The next level required 30 experience points. He'd need to grind for a few more years. His current summon limit was 50. His new skill was vision sharing. Black was sent into the sky to activate the new skill. Oling saw himself through the eagle's eyes and was stunned. He could see through his summoned creature's eyes. Beyond vision, he also shared their hearing. Most special was the ability to directly control the summons. It felt exactly like playing a game. The special trait, no distance limit for sharing. He wondered how many summons he could share with simultaneously. So he summoned 3 more eagles to test. Elaine's mind displayed 5 different viewpoints, including his own. Summoning a tiger as well still worked fine. But when the count hit 6, his head felt like it would explode. Initially, Oling thought the sharing limit was 5 summons. But he realized his own mental stat was the bottleneck. The boy created new cards dedicated to boosting sharing capacity. This time, he could successfully share vision with 6 creatures at once. The protagonist then created cards for all his new beasts and summoned them at once. Specifically, every newly summoned creature came pre-equipped with vision sharing. Since he could use sharing to issue commands and activate skills, Oling had a new idea. He no longer needed to fight personally, just remotely control his summons, as he pleased. To test it, he chose a pack of armor ants as prey. Oling used command cards to control the entire pack. Wolves had high combat power, easily tearing through the ants. Turtles specialized in defensive armor. Harami possessed ally-enhancing skills. All stats were boosted, thrilling Oling with these new beasts. Hunting became vastly easier. The anti-magic flower plant restored mana. Oling planted it in the ground to grow recovery fruits. Instantly, 1,000 mana was added. This was essentially a supreme mana recovery item. The owl skill was night vision, which he hadn't tested yet. It would help the protagonist hunt at night, replacing Black. The remote control army was officially formed. From now on, Oling could stay home and control his summons to hunt. Just thinking about it gave him chills of excitement. He reminded his summons not to attack adventurers, even if provoked. On the way back, Oling suddenly realized he could send his summons flying to visit his family. Currently, Krana and Gida were sparring with Matt. His father was still telling funny stories. The family's life had improved so much that they no longer needed to wear ragged clothes. His mother and little sister were happily playing inside the house. Oling then had the eagle leave a gold coin behind for the family to use. Seeing them healthy and happy, he felt at ease. From now on, He planned to send more money back home. The scene shifts to 1 month after White Dragon left its nest. The Lord praised Xenoph for his excellent reconnaissance mission. The condition of the mithril mines was rather poor. Having been unused for so long, they had become monster nests. Not just the mines, but the surrounding areas were also overrun by monsters. The Lord really wanted to put part of the mines into operation, but calculations showed it would take another 3 years to clear out the surrounding monsters. Hearing this, he asked the captain to try and shorten the timeline to utilize the rare resources. The Viscount's territory had been in terrible condition recently. He deliberately sent miners to extract resources near White Dragon's new nest, enraging it. All the miners were wiped out, so they needed to be cautious with their own operations. It was only now that the Knight Squadron began eliminating monsters. Meanwhile, Oling was gaining experience by letting his summoned beasts hunt autonomously. He had maximized his time over the past month. In 2 years, he could leave the Lord's service and become an adventurer. Therefore, he wanted to use these 2 years to grind levels. On the weekend, the boy joined the battle alongside his summons. Today's target was a goblin village. The goblins spotted the enemy and immediately swarmed to surround them, but their forces were larger and of higher quality. His bear summons easily swept through the pests without breaking a sweat. Back when he was a gamer, Arling had many tricks for grinding experience, but they couldn't be applied in this world. Moreover, these goblins had killed many villagers and occupied the settlement, so they had to pay the price. He prioritized eliminating the goblin archers first, ensuring his bear legion faced no ranged attacks. With both front and rear surrounded, the remaining goblins panicked. Just then, the Goblin King appeared. It was furious that the protagonist had wiped out its troops. This type of creature was only as big as a bear. Elaine's summon army already had plenty of experience, defeating S-rank monsters, so it posed no threat. The battle quickly ended in his victory. He earned 48,000 total experience for clearing the goblin village. The area was almost completely cleansed by Oling. Next would be the slime's territory. By year's end, Mihai had finished his studies and returned, but his mood was extremely gloomy, unlike previous years. He immediately challenged the protagonist to a duel, and the match began. Everyone in the house noticed something was very off about Mihai. To properly spar with the young master, the protagonist summoned 30 wolves and 20 bears. This pushed his attack focus stats to their peak condition. In reality, he was quite surprised that Mihai was the one to propose a duel, demanding they use their full strength. His speed this year was double what it was last year. He aimed to end it in one strike, but it was blocked. The battle gradually intensified. Yet, Arling still felt overwhelmed, unable to land hits despite being faster. Mihai seemed to be reading all of his movements. The swordsmanship techniques trained at the academy were still something Arling lacked. Startled, his weapon was knocked away just like last year. Mihai praised their household hunter. This time, he didn't step forward to shake hands, which left Arling confused. Cecil and Thomas also confirmed the protagonist had grown stronger, but still couldn't match their older brother. The purple-haired girl thought she'd ask Mihai to train all 3 of them starting tomorrow. But the older brother declined, saying he needed to fulfill his noble duties. Therefore, he wouldn't be returning home. The 2 younger siblings were completely unaware. Their parents looked unwilling but were powerless, as this was a noble obligation. Mihai reassured his sister that he'd only be gone for 3 years. He recalled how the Viscount had also mentioned this matter during his visit. The lords to talented children would have to fulfill their noble duties. The next day, Mihai bid farewell to his family and loved ones before departing. Outside, he met Arling and asked him to take care of his younger sister and ensure her safety. Though he didn't fully understand everything, Arling agreed and earned his trust. The scene jumps to 5 months later. Arling had nearly cleared all monster-infested areas. Only one last goblin village remained. The battle erupted, with him commanding from the sidelines. Turtles were summoned to act as shields, blocking all incoming arrows. Other summoned beasts would vanish upon taking too much damage. Thus, Arling always prioritized eliminating enemy archers first. The mighty army advanced inward until an alarm sounded as they breached the goblin village. From within, An army of over 200 entities emerged to meet them in battle. Aling felt confident and ordered his bears to charge in for experience grinding. Everything was going smoothly until a magic projectile was fired, directly at him. Fortunately, the turtle blocked the attack, keeping Aling safe. On the enemy side, 3 special individuals could cast magic, serving as the monster's main force. For the first time, the protagonist was thrilled by a battle. He waited for the 3 mages to fire another volley before counterattacking. Mages were weak in defense, so a single thrown strike could instantly kill them. However, the remaining two ducked down to cast spells safely. He hadn't expected them to be this cunning. Enemy numbers had already dropped to 100. Previously, Aling had stockpiled 100 mana recovery items. These fruits alone were enough to summon 20,000 bears in a single day. Essentially, this would be a war of attrition. Every bear that fell was immediately resummoned. Just when it seemed like an easy win, the most terrifying monster revealed itself. The Goblin King had stats far surpassing his bears, taking down 2 of them with a single strike. Aling hastily summoned more, but couldn't keep up with the rate of destruction. The situation grew extremely dire. The turtles vanished after blocking 3 mage spells. The protagonist was forced to have his remaining bears tank 1 hit to reduce the damage. Even so, he was blown away by the explosion. Aling recovered his lost HP and planned to retreat, but Captain Zenoph arrived right then. They weren't supposed to arrive until tomorrow, but seeing smoke, they detoured to investigate. Seeing the scene before him, he demanded an explanation. Aling said he was trying to exterminate the village. Aling quickly recalled his beasts, but couldn't fool the captain. The captain approached the king and told the vice-captain to clean up the rest. They made no mention of his summoned beasts. Aling really wanted to farm Ting's furfing monster, but late it go. The clash between 2 powerhouses began. Zenoph only needed 1 hand to block the monster's strikes. He often fought with an overwhelming style, earning him the title God of War. All the Goblin King's attacks were completely ineffective. The vice-captain then joined the fray. He leaped directly into the center of the enemy formation, and unleashed a special skill similar to Quian's. With a single strike, he pierced through dozens of monsters along with the mages. The protagonist never expected the vice-captain to be this formidable. Yet, in reality, he had lost to Quian. The captain then delivered a finishing blow to the king. He executed a 1-hit kill, cleaving the monster in half. That evening, Aling was allowed to stay with the Night Squadron. Both sides began discussing his abilities. Actually, he already knew Aling was the one wiping out goblins. After he became the Lord's attendant, rumors spread about monster corpses missing their magic cores. Their team had narrowed down the area and identified the culprit as Aling, not to mention bringing back shields, and even sparring evenly with Mihai. All of this led the captain to realize the beasts fighting alongside him were the talent he possessed. Zenoph revealed that the Lord already knew, shocking Aling nearly to death. That was why they allowed him to become a hunter. No sane person would let a child take on such a dangerous profession. The captain's condition for keeping today's events secret was that Aling must provide information and updates on his hunting progress. Knowing they shared a common goal, cooperation seemed perfectly reasonable. Aling agreed and eagerly hopped onto the captain's back. It hadn't vanished even after the captain leveled up. The next day, the protagonist checked the experience gained from the goblin village, totaling 330,000, far more than regular goblin hunting. The following evening, a royal messenger arrived. They handed the Lord Mihai's diary. Everyone in the manor was allowed to read the diary. The reason for delivering it was that their son had died and been buried. Grief washed over everyone. Only 3 months after Mihai left, and he was already gone. The Lord believed they had turned his child into a sacrifice due to their low noble status. The messenger asked if they wanted this message relayed to the king. The entire family was plunged into mourning. His final words when they last met echoed in his mind. Perhaps he already knew he would die, which was why he asked me to look after his sister. Cecil, looking completely hollow, asked her father what this all meant. The news shattered the purple-haired girl. It seemed the Lord already knew Mihai would die, as it was the obligation of nobles who possess talent. And soon, Cecil herself would have to fulfill this duty. She couldn't accept living just to know she would die. Despairing, the girl ran away as her father stood powerless. The next morning, still grieving Mihai's passing, the Lord's household received news that his daughter had disappeared. Aling rushed out to search and found she had climbed out the window. He blamed himself for not being by her side when she needed him most. Cecil, exhausted, sat somewhere nearby. This was her first time running away from home. Resting in a corner, the purple-haired girl gazed at a gift Mihai had given her. Her father had previously shown her the diary her brother left behind. Mihai knew full well the place he was going was a death trap. He never thought he'd return alive. Just then, the protagonist located the young lady through his night bird. Cecil asked to take her back, but he said no. He was here to stay by her side. Aling said nothing more and simply stood still. The girl soon grew hungry. He pulled food from his storage space and offered it to her. Too hungry to care, the purple-haired girl just ate. But after the first bite, tears fell as she thought of her lost brother. Even though Mihai had no enemies, he died on a battlefield. Aling acknowledged that he was truly strong. He had never once beaten Mihai. In the diary, Mihai had written about his own fears and his desire to return home. And yet, fate snuffed out the life of someone who had just come of age. Cecil truly didn't want to die. Hearing this, Aling proposed they leave together, escape the city, and forget about family politics. Together, they could travel to other countries and see different cities. The girl thought it was impossible. Cecil asked if going to the capital academy was really that important. What he meant was for her to live and choose her own path. He asked what she wanted to do when she grew up. This question reminded her of Mihai's words. He didn't fight for family interests or factions, but for his own will. Knowing death awaited him, he still chose to go. Recalling something, Cecil requested to return to the manor. Afterward, she acted spoiled, asking for a piggyback ride home. The purple-haired girl hugged him tightly and thanked him. Upon returning, her parents were incredibly worried. Naturally, no one scolded their daughter. Instead, they brought good news. Mithril mining was about to begin. If mining rights were handed to the royal family, Cecil would be exempt from her duty. Aling realized this was why the Lord wanted to accelerate mining operations. However, the purple-haired girl had grown stronger. Cecil declared she would follow her brother's example and fulfill her noble duty. If her brother could overcome his own weakness, she wouldn't run away either. The scene jumps to half a year later. Snow had begun to fall, but it didn't stop Aling from hunting monsters. Since that incident, the protagonist had more time to grind levels, simultaneously helping the Lord speed up mining operations. According to Captain Zenov's calculations, mithril mining would begin by summer. They also needed to monitor the Viscount's side. After White Dragon nested in his territory, the Viscount made no new moves. This naturally made the local lord uneasy. Reconnaissance today was difficult, requiring mountain climbing to reach the monster nests. Previously, Cecil had demanded to come along but was refused. At her level, mountain climbing would likely send her running back immediately. He knew the girl wanted to grow stronger, but no father would let his daughter go to such a dangerous place. Aling spotted an ant colony obstructing mithril mining. Typically, a nest like this would contain thousands of ants, including the queen and regular armored workers. According to intel, the ant queen was a B-rank monster. Defeating it required eliminating the worker ants outside first. Naturally, Aling had grown much stronger and felt extremely confident. First, he summoned 6 beasts to initiate the attack. The vanguard consisted of 4 bears, 1 hedgehog, and 1 fish to handle the front lines. Hundreds of other ants emerged from the tunnels. Aling was forced to summon a massive number of beasts to sweep through them. And so, he battled the ant colony for an entire month. Yet, no matter how many he killed, they seemed endless, still not dwindling. Each visit, he usually eliminated over 200 ants. Over the month, he'd killed more than 2,000, but the armored ants remained numerous. Grinding experience this way was nice, but grinding through the nights worried him. His goal was to clear the mine so the Lord could begin operations, so he switched tactics. This approach wasn't working. Thus, massive experience points were accumulated. Near the end of the day, the ant numbers had finally decreased. The protagonist's persistence paid off. He then summoned night crabs for reconnaissance. Using the vision-sharing skill, he began exploring the massive labyrinth the ants had created. Ants were still inside, so the crabs got bitten. Arling had to resummon them to restart. After a while, he spotted the egg chamber along with thousands of eggs ready to hatch. The protagonist controlled 8 crabs simultaneously. This forced his brain to operate at maximum capacity. He wished he had some sweets here to replenish his energy. Exploring the labyrinth until late afternoon, still hadn't finished it. Arling decided to sleep here rather than wait until tomorrow night, when they'd reproduce again. Finally, good news arrived when a crab discovered the queen's chamber. He simply dragged a bear army in the predetermined direction and was done. The ant queen was 3 times larger than the regular ones. First, Arling ordered his bears to deal with the lesser guards. The queen was no ordinary foe. Even alone, she remained incredibly powerful. Fortunately, Elaine's summoning speed outpaced her destruction rate. They all targeted her unprotected abdomen. After a while of biting, the damn thing finally collapsed and died. Arling earned 45,000 experience points from this encounter. The reason it was so easy was that the queen had to lay thousands of eggs daily, severely weakening her. Fearing scolding upon returning to the manor, he needed to bring proof of his achievement. Surprisingly, he found a raw mithril ore right here without needing to dig. By the next morning, he returned with the queen's head. Everyone who witnessed it stared in wide-eyed disbelief. Cecil, knowing he went to White Dragon Mountain, scolded him severely. The captain had never seen an ant queen before and wasn't sure if it was real. The ant nest was supposed to be a place their night squadron couldn't breach. Hearing this, the girl thought he was bluffing to spite them. After all, even the captain hadn't dared to attack the nest. To prove himself further, he presented to rare ore crystals. The Lord naturally knew mithril wasn't something easily picked up, so he began calculating. Everyone then moved to the meeting room. The purple-haired girl admired the protagonist for actually conquering the entire ant colony. He sketched out the locations he had discovered. The internal layout was extremely complex, but with a map, it became simple. This was the 5th ore deposit they had discovered. Seeing his great achievement, the Lord forgave him for staying out all night. Additionally, he was granted mining rights to 3 portions of mithril. The steward noted that this would bring him enormous profits. The scene shifts to October. Arling was now 12, and rare ore mining was proceeding smoothly. Currently, the protagonist held mining rights, so he no longer needed to worry about finances. Just then, his older brother announced that a royal envoy had arrived. Arling went to see and found the old man accompanied by the Viscount. Just looking at his face, Arling knew this wouldn't be anything good. The Lord calmly asked what brought the 2 of them here. They spoke about how mithril mining here was progressing well. Therefore, he proposed a mutually beneficial cooperation between the 2 families. Hearing this, Arling smelled negotiation. The Lord would not agree. Despite knowing it was the Viscount's side, the Lord asked them to reconsider. The other side showed visible annoyance, thinking a minor lord dared to distrust him. The Lord maintained a firm stance, causing the frustrated group to leave. After 100 years, this place finally gained benefits, yet before they could even start, others were already eyeing it. Truly frustrating. Currently, Xenoff and his squad were at White Dragon Mountain and needed 2 days to return. The Lord planned to travel to the capital with his friend in 2 days to report this to the king. But unexpectedly, an incident occurred at the manor. Arling rushed in at night and found Cecil being held captive by assassins. He immediately attacked, but the opponents were far from ordinary. The protagonist switched his cards to stat-boosting murder. Seeing he was hard to digest, another enemy used a sleeping gas to capture them both. When they woke up, the pair had been taken elsewhere. Even tied up, the summoner could still control his beasts. Arling summoned a bird to scout the surroundings. A boss figure later entered, asking who Arling was. A subordinate said selling a swordsman like him would be highly profitable. The result was a punch to the face, with orders not to do unnecessary things. If he became a hindrance, they could just dispose of Arleng. The subordinate was bitter that the boss had made the other assassin the leader. He heard the man had returned from a brutal battlefield. He was someone capable of facing Captain Ruin. His past was glorious, but he had fled to save himself. The army he led was annihilated. Seizing the opportunity, Arleng sent the bird outside to observe. He discovered they were being transported on a flying vessel. Inside, there was even a large restaurant serving guests. The protagonist spotted the Viscount and the envoy, realizing the situation. The masterminds were clearly them. To secure mining rights, the Viscount would stop at nothing. And if the Lord dared to report to the king, he would pay with his daughter's life. They left a threatening letter. If he refused to comply, he'd return one of Cecil's hands to the manor. At that moment, the purple-haired girl woke up. Panicked, Arleng struggled to resist. The enemies noticed he was hiding his abilities and attacked. This time, his summoned beasts distracted them. Arleng unleashed his strikes, easily defeating them. He immediately moved to the door for the young lady, but the strongest assassin appeared. Without a word, he struck Arleng, sending him flying. The boy was stunned. The man seemed to vanish in a split second. He asked about the summoned beasts, having never seen them before. Arleng threw out a decoy, then had a mimicking bird fly off to create a diversion. Finally, he deployed half-dead spiders to hinder the enemy. The silver-haired man was furious at being tricked by a kid. Taking the chance, Arleng hurriedly moved Cecil elsewhere. However, the opponent was too strong, so the protagonist decided to jump from a great height. The height was roughly 100 meters. Arleng asked if she trusted him to make the jump with her. Cecil shook her head. He transferred all his stats into endurance. With that, jumping from this height wouldn't be a problem. The girl could only scream in fear. Fortunately, they landed safely. However, Arleng was still scraped up. Once again, he used life grass to heal himself. He tried to reassure her, saying they should head home together. He asked if she was injured anywhere, so he could use life grass on her. The purple-haired girl was highly curious about the magical beasts the protagonist summoned and how he could be so strong. There were too many questions for him to answer immediately. More importantly, the assassins were showing signs of tracking them. The youth didn't forget to deploy birds to monitor the situation. From the shared vision, he saw the assassin reporting to the Viscount. The opponent was no pushover, and soon resumed pursuit of the pair. Knowing this, Arleng had to navigate through narrow alleys to lose him. However, the enemy possessed a tracking skill, so he continued following closely. To erase his trail, Arleng jumped onto rooftops. This slowed the pursuer down slightly. The protagonist, watching through a crab, felt a bit smug. Cecil later asked why he didn't just control the enemy, since he seemed so strong. The youth replied directly that someone like that was difficult to deal with. If a summoner gets cornered by an assassin, they're done for. Arleng scaled a wall, calculating it would take a few more days to return to his friend's territory. He continued summoning shield-bearing beasts to use as stepping stones, hiding their direction. Doing it this way would erase their footprints. Thus, that night, the pair could sleep without fearing the assassin would find them. Cecil still wondered if the protagonist actually had talent or not. When asked why he hid it, the boy replied there was no benefit in revealing it. The two slept until dawn. Arleng then had to carry the young lady on his back, running toward the territory. He had left several birds behind to observe the enemy. He thought the man would give up once the trail vanished, but he hadn't. This enemy possessed extremely high speed and stamina, moving down through the town. Simultaneously, he expanded his search radius to erase tracks. Soon, he would deduce which direction Arleng was fleeing. Immediately, he used ants to run across the sky. Thus, a relentless 2-day chase ensued. By afternoon, he finally brought Cecil into her family's control zone. The soldiers rejoiced at the young lady's return. However, Arleng realized the enemy was very close. A carriage would definitely be too slow, so he had to keep running. Cecil asked what was wrong, and he said the main assassin was coming. He will enter of bird's line of sight. He had also deduced Elaine's footprint erasing technique. The reason they didn't stay at the checkpoint was due to insufficient allied forces. They certainly couldn't stop him. The purple-haired girl suggested leaving her behind so Oling could escape. But Oling refused, saying he had promised Mihai. That promise was to stay by her side and protect her. Hearing this, Cecil sadly said thank you. The pair continued running for another full day without stopping to rest. Oling continuously used life grass to recover stamina. Thinking they could smoothly return to the city, an unexpected event occurred. The dam monster from 3 years ago, blinded in one eye by Oling, had spotted them immediately. It lunged after them like a starving leech. He quickly warned the young lady about the mud golem from 3 years ago tailing them. Being cornered by 2 powerful pursuers now meant certain doom. Fortunately, the assassin and the monster would likely try to kill each other, therefore, their only option was to defeat the mud golem right here. Oling stepped forward into a dirt trench to face his old enemy. The monster roared, seemingly thrilled to see him again. He calmly said he didn't have much time to fight, so let's end it in one move. The simplest strategy was to overwhelm it with sheer numbers of summoned beasts. Thus, bears and hedgehogs were summoned. They restrained and continuously clawed at the mud golem's body. However, it remained completely unharmed and unbothered. After their previous encounter, it had grown wary of Oling. Cecil watched from the side, worried whether the protagonist could actually defeat the thing. Turtles were also summoned to act as shields, protecting the purple-haired girl. Oling, however, was grabbed by the monster. He shouted for Cecil not to come closer. The mud golem squeezed tightly, crushing Elaine's body. He had to continuously use life grass. The creature seemed to enjoy savoring the moment, not wanting to kill him instantly. It even put his head in its mouth to chew. The sight made the girl collapse in place. But the monster's fatal mistake was not chewing his head. Oling remained extremely calm even as his body was nearly severed. He used his knife to blind the mud golem's remaining eye. In agony, it tried to bite through Oling. However, he had dumped all his stats into durability, so he was fine. The protagonist drove the knife deep into its brain. The mud golem twitched, handing victory to Oling. The experience points earned from this battle were 82,000. Seeing him safe and sound, the girl ran to hug him. The purple-haired girl thought the protagonist had died. Because the fight took longer than expected, the assassin had arrived. He was extremely bitter about being tricked. He was determined to kill the boy right here. Elaine's weapons were completely depleted. He told Cecil to run ahead while he held the enemy back. The silver-haired man admired the teenager's heroic stance. But he didn't like it, so he struck. Despite standing far from the battlefield, the man vanished in an instant, leaving Oling no time to react. The opponent taunted him, asking if he wasn't going to summon his beasts anymore. Before finishing his sentence, he wanted Oling to experience enough pain to regret running away. Suddenly, a fireball flew in, startling both. It turned out to be Cecil's magic skill. She could use magic, but still couldn't control it properly. The assassin dodged the fireball and lunged to slap her. Since she still held value, he didn't dare kill her. Oling was furious seeing his magical girl slapped. He recounted the contemptible acts of those scumbags, how he fled the battlefield after only a year. And now he was throwing his weight around against children. Being called a coward enraged the assassin. Thus, the protagonist was beaten to a pulp. He had exhausted his mana, but remained highly confident inside. Just as the silver-haired man delivered a fatal blow, he smiled. Captain Zenov had been summoned by Elaine's bird. While fighting the monster, he had calculated the assassin would track him down, so he acted in advance. The two sides then exchanged taunts. The assassin claimed that if nobles were thieves, then knights were just bandits born from thieves. He had defended a fortress for 10 years, only to receive a title from a backwater lord. His comrades had all died because of knights, so he wanted revenge. The man thrust forward, but the captain didn't even bother to dodge. He said they sacrificed themselves to protect the people and the country. There was no reason to feel ashamed. Power surged within him as Captain Zenov seriously unleashed a one-hit kill technique, ending the opponent. This special skill was so powerful it blew away a section of the background, slicing the bastard in half. Thus, They returned safely to the manor, bringing joy to everyone. The tense 4-day pursuit had finally ended. Arling also informed the lord that the Viscount and the envoy were behind the young lady's kidnapping. Hearing this, he asked the envoy to depart for the capital immediately, but Arling had a different idea. Even if the king was informed, the two masterminds would only be fined, and they'd simply plot revenge again. Arling wanted to return the 3 mining rights portions to the lord, asking him to use them to demand the royal family investigate and thoroughly resolve this matter. The idea was to bribe the royal family into turning a blind eye. If the enemy played dirty, there was no reason they couldn't do the same. He had used his dirt-covered hands to fight and protect his family and the lord. Now, he should also get his hands dirty to protect his loved ones. The lord was very honest, but living too purely in this world wasn't good. As a noble, he always aimed for integrity and righteousness. But now things were different. If they threatened his daughter, he didn't care if his hands got dirty. The protagonist then executed the plan. All involved parties were punished. The Viscount's territory was confiscated by the kingdom. The protagonist's master also received fervent support from the people. Arling gained additional trust. He and Cecil were granted the right to know more about the outside world. Where they lived now was the center of the continent. Beside it lay a powerful empire that had once invaded this kingdom. Currently, no one wanted to fight over territory anymore, because they faced a far greater threat, the Demon King. He emerged from a forgotten continent 112 years ago. He forced all kings to submit to him, but no nation agreed. 62 years ago, a massive war broke out on a continental scale. The Demon King's army consisted of countless magical beasts, all ranked B or higher. Thus, border villages of the empire were quickly wiped out completely. Additionally, 4 smaller nations collapsed under the Demon King. This included the Dwarven nation and the Elven nation. Faced with this, all remaining kingdoms were forced to ally against the enemy. Academies across the land stepped up to train children with talent. Simultaneously, they sent graduates to the front lines to help push back the Demon King's forces. Even so, the empire lost a quarter of its territory. Just as all seemed lost, a surprise occurred. All of humanity's hope, the hero Heroios, was born in the empire. At age 15, he marched to war to reclaim lost territory. With unstoppable momentum, the hero reclaimed the border in under a year. This revered figure still remains on the front lines, yet 50% of nobles still die in battle. The king here continuously develops territories to focus on logistics. That is also why the serf village was established. Everything began connecting, allowing Arling to understand the full picture. He was later rewarded by the lord with a large amount of gold, including compensation for defeating the terrifying monster. And a reward from Cecil. Part of the gold was also to pay Arling to accompany and protect his daughter. Previously, he had requested an exemption for his daughter from the battlefield, but was denied. Cecil's talent would be extremely useful on the battlefield. Thus, this gold represented all the money he could gather to request and pay for Elaine's protection. He asked him to protect his daughter on the brutal battlefield, when she turned 15. First, Arling would be sent to the academy for training due to his rare talent. The lord bowed his head and pleaded, so Arling didn't refuse, though he only requested 400 gold coins. He requested tax exemptions for his family and Krana's family as well. From now on, he would resign to focus entirely on training to protect the young lady. In return, the lord granted him valuable backing. The lord's family would support him in every aspect. Arling felt the past 12 years had been truly meaningful, filling him with immense joy.